My fiancé asked for a break to date his ex, saying he'd come back if it didn't work, so I made sure he came back to nothing. Hey folks, after lurking around here for what feels like forever, I figured it's time to share what's been going on with me lately. Alright, so here's the deal. My name's Raina. I'm 30, and up until recently, I thought I was marrying the love of my life, David. We'd been together for 4 years, and for most of that time, I was sure we were solid. But now I'm sitting here wondering how I didn't see this coming sooner. David and I met through a mutual friend at a birthday party. He was funny, confident, and had this no-nonsense eternense attitude that I really liked. I'd dated before, but no one clicked with me the way he did. We hit it off fast and moved in together after a year. Things felt natural, like we were on the same page about everything. Careers, marriage, starting a family someday. He was freelancing as a graphic designer, and I worked in marketing, so our schedules kind of synced up. Life wasn't flashy, but it was good. We'd been talking about getting married for a while, but it wasn't until last year that he popped the question. It wasn't anything fancy, just a quiet dinner at home, just the two of us. David seemed thrilled. He smiled, hugged me, and said yes. That night, we started planning the future. A fall wedding, a small guest list, and this cozy little venue by the lake. It felt like everything was falling into place, or so I thought. The first red flags weren't huge, obvious things. They were small, sneaky little cracks that I shrugged off because I didn't want to overthink. For example, David's excitement about the wedding planning started fading after a few months. At first, he was all in, sending me Pinterest boards, scrolling through wedding suits, and asking me about the little details like if I preferred tulips or roses for the centerpieces. But then it just stopped. I'd ask him stuff like, "Hey, have you decided on your groomsmen yet?" And he'd brush it off. "Not yet. I'm still thinking about it," he'd say over and over again. The same with his suit, the cake, even the music. Every decision we'd been so excited about just became this thing he wanted to delay. "There's still time," he'd tell me. It was like the wedding was an afterthought. At the time, I told myself it was just stress. Wedding planning can be overwhelming, right? Plus, David had a lot going on with his work. I figured he'd snap out of it eventually. What I didn't realize was that his lack of enthusiasm wasn't about the wedding. It was about us. The real slap in the face came one night when we were hanging out with some friends. Someone brought that stupid TikTok game. You've probably seen it. It's that game where you answer personal questions and everyone's supposed to keep a straight face and not judge, although everyone judges. Anyway, everything was going fine until someone asked, if you could relive one relationship, which one would it be? Without even thinking, David said, "Oh, probably Anna." Just like that, Anna. His college ex, the one who cheated on him. The second he said it, the room got awkwardly quiet. He laughed nervously and tried to backtrack, saying, "I mean, not like I'd actually want to. It's just, a big part of my past." I wanted to call him out right there, but we were with friends, so I let it slide. Later, when we were alone, I asked him about it. "What was that about Anna? Why would you say you'd relive that relationship?" He just shrugged it off like it was no big deal. "It was a stupid game, Raina. Don't take it so seriously." He smiled and changed the subject. I didn't push it because honestly, I didn't want to start a fight over something that might have been nothing. But deep down, it stuck with me. After that, his behavior got harder to ignore. He was on his phone more often, scrolling through his messages with this sly little smile. He started making vague excuses about why he couldn't hang out or why he'd cancel plans at the last minute. "Oh, sorry. I just have a lot of work to catch up on tonight," he'd say. Or, "I promised my mom I'd visit this weekend." The excuses weren't exactly suspicious, but they were piling up. It felt like I was suddenly less of a priority. Then came the Friday night that changed everything. I got home early from work, excited to spend the evening with David. I was thinking we could order in and binge watch something, just a low-key night. When I walked in, though, the vibe was off. He was sitting on the couch with his laptop, but he wasn't working. He was just staring at the screen, completely zoned out. "Hey, I'm home," I said, trying to break the tension. "You're early," he replied, like that was a bad thing. I brushed it off and went to the kitchen to start making dinner, but the silence in the house was suffocating. Usually he'd be asking me how my day was or telling me about his, but tonight, nothing. Finally, I turned around and asked, "Everything okay?" He closed his laptop and looked at me. "Actually, there's something I need to talk to you about." And just like that, my stomach dropped. You know that feeling when you know something bad's about to happen, but you can't stop it? That was me standing there like an idiot with a spatula in my hand. I walked over and sat across from him. "All right," I said. "What's going on?" He hesitated like he was trying to find the right words. Then he just came out with it. "I've been thinking about us and about Anna." I swear I almost laughed. "Anna? Are you serious? What about her?" He bit his lip and avoided my eyes. "I think I need some time to figure things out. I want to take a break to see if there's still something there with her." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You want to take a break so you can date your ex? Are you out of your mind, David? We're engaged." "It's not like that," he said quickly, like he thought he could smooth this over. I need to know if I'm making the right choice with you. And if it doesn't work out, I promise I'll come back." That's when I realized just how deep his audacity ran. He thought I'd sit around and wait for him to figure out if I was good enough. At that moment, something inside me shifted. I didn't blow up, didn't yell. I just sat there staring at him, wondering how the hell I didn't see this coming. I didn't even know how to respond at first. My fiancé, just told me he wanted to take a break to explore things with his ex, Anna. What do you even say to that? Finally, I managed to ask, "So, what exactly does this break mean to you?" My voice came out calm, way calmer than I felt. He straightened up a little, like he'd been preparing for this conversation. "I think we need some space to figure things out. I'll take some time to see if what I'm feeling about Anna is real, and you can take time to reflect on us, too." I couldn't believe the nerve. "Wait," I said, leaning forward. "You're saying you need to date your ex, but I need to reflect on us? What kind of backwards logic is that?" David sighed like I was the one being unreasonable. "It's not about you doing something wrong, Raina. This is about me figuring out what I need." I felt he had rehearsed this. The way he was talking, the way he avoided eye contact, it was like he'd already decided this was happening, and now he just needed me to roll with it. "You know this sounds insane, right?" I said. "You don't just put your fiancé on hold while you go play what if with someone who treated you like garbage." His face hardened, and for the first time, I saw just how stubborn he could be. "I'm not asking for permission, Raina. I'm telling you what I need." That one hit different. I wasn't just upset anymore. I was angry. I stood up and started pacing, trying to calm myself down. "So what, David? You're just going to pack a bag and head over to Anna's place? Is that your big plan?" "No," he snapped. "It's not like that. I don't know what it looks like yet, but I need clarity before we move forward. I owe it to myself to know I'm making the right decision." "You owe it to yourself," I repeated, laughing bitterly. "And what about what you owe me? We're engaged, David. We're supposed to be building a life together, and now you're telling me you need to test drive your ex to make sure I'm good enough." "I never said you weren't good enough," he shot back, his voice rising. "But if we're going to spend the rest of our lives together, I have to be certain, and right now, I'm not." That was it. It wasn't just that he wanted to explore things with Anna, it was that he wasn't sure about me. After 4 years together, after all the plans we'd made, he still wasn't sure. It hit me all at once. He didn't even realize how hurtful and ridiculous his request was. He thought this was reasonable, like I'd just sit there while he worked through whatever nonsense was spinning in his head. I stopped pacing and looked at him, really looked at him. "You know what? Sure," I said, my tone flat. "Take your break." He blinked, caught off guard by how easily I agreed. "Raina, I'm not trying to hurt you. I need space to figure things out." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "All right, if that's what you need." He hesitated, like he was expecting me to argue, to fight for him. When I didn't, he stood up, grabbed his laptop, and mumbled, "I'll stay at my mom's for a bit. This isn't forever. We'll talk when I've had some time." "Okay," I said simply. He glanced at me, unsure of how to respond, then disappeared into the bedroom. I could hear him moving around, throwing stuff into a bag. I stayed on the couch, calm on the surface, but my mind was already turning. If he wanted his break so bad, fine, let him have it. A few minutes later, I heard the front door close. He was gone, probably thinking he'd left me here to wait and wonder. Little did he know, I wasn't going to just sit around. He could have his fantasy, but I had my own plans now. I don't know how long I sat there before I finally snapped out of it. The first thing I did was grab my phone and call my best friend, Noah. Noah's been my rock since college, and he's the kind of guy who doesn't sugarcoat things. If I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy for feeling like my entire life had just fallen apart, he was the guy. "Yo, what's up?" he answered, his voice casual. "David wants to take a break to date his ex," I blurted out. There was a long pause. "What the hell? He said that to your face?" "Yep," I said, rubbing my temple. "He packed a bag and left like it was no big deal. Said he needs clarity. Noah let out a low whistle. That's messed up. You okay? Not really, I admitted. I don't even know how to process this. 4 years, Noah, 4 years, and he's still hung up on Anna. You want me to come over? He asked. We can order some food. Talk it out. Yeah, actually, that'd be great, I said. About an hour later, Noah showed up with pizza. He didn't even wait for me to explain the whole thing. He just listened as I vented about everything. By the time I finished, he was shaking his head. He's not worth this, Noah said firmly. If he can't see what he has with you, that's on him. You're better off without someone who's going to treat you like a second option. I nodded, but it didn't make me feel any better. It wasn't just about losing David. It was about losing the future I thought we were building together. I'd pictured a life with him, marriage, kids, all of it, and now it was just gone. We stayed up late talking and watching TV, and for the first time in hours, I started to feel a little less like the ground was crumbling beneath me. I didn't have a plan yet, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let David keep me on a leash while he figured out what he wanted. The next morning, my phone buzzed. I rolled over, half awake, and squinted at the screen. David, of course. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a moment, my brain still foggy. He wants to talk? Seriously? After everything he laid out, now he wanted to play the concerned fiancé? I thought he might have realized how stupid he sounded yesterday. I dragged myself to the kitchen to make coffee. There was no way I was dealing with this nonsense before caffeine. As I leaned against the counter sipping my coffee, my mind raced. He really had the nerve to come back and act like I was the one who owed him patience. It wasn't anger I felt, not anymore. It was disbelief. How could someone be so oblivious, so wrapped up in their own fantasy that they thought this kind of stunt was acceptable? But I wasn't about to let him see that. No. If he wanted to play this game, I'd play along, except I wouldn't be the one losing. Finally, I picked up my phone and replied, "Sure, come over later." Short, simple. Let him think he was still in control. A few hours later, there he was, standing at the door like nothing had happened. He looked polished, like he'd spent way too much time trying to perfect that calm, collected look. His hair was neat, his shirt crisp. I could tell he'd rehearsed this. He was ready to sell me whatever he'd come up with. I stepped aside and let him in without a word. He walked in like he still belonged here, sitting on the couch like it was any other day. "Thanks for letting me come by," he said softly, like he was doing me a favor. I leaned against the wall. "What's up?" He took a deep breath, his hands clasped together like this was some big performance. "I've been thinking a lot," he began. "Here we go. And I think I've come up with a way for us to move forward," he continued, his tone too measured, too rehearsed. I nodded, keeping my face neutral. "All right, let's hear it." "Well," he said, clearly building up to something he thought was genius, "I think the best thing for us right now is to put the wedding plans on hold, just temporarily, while I take the time I need to get clarity on everything. That way we don't lose the progress we've made, and we can pick things back up once I'm sure about us." I stared at him, waiting for the twist. He wasn't joking. He actually thought this was reasonable. "That's your big plan?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes," he said, nodding like he'd just solved a world crisis. "It's practical, Raina. We've put so much time, effort, and money into this relationship. I don't want to throw it all away over something that might not even matter in the long run." Something that might not even matter. That phrase kept bouncing around in my head. He was talking about us, our relationship, like it was some investment portfolio he didn't want to write off. I felt a laugh bubble up, but I held it back. Not yet. Let him keep going. "You're okay with this, right?" he asked, tilting his head slightly, like he was genuinely confused why I hadn't reacted yet. "Sure," I said, shrugging. His eyes flicked to mine like he didn't quite believe I'd agreed so easily. "Wait, you're okay with it?" "Yeah," I said, keeping my tone even. "If that's what you need, go for it." He blinked, clearly thrown off. He'd probably expected me to argue, to fight, maybe even beg him to stay. Instead, I gave him nothing. "I just don't want you to think this means I don't care," he added quickly, trying to fill the silence. "I just need some space to figure out what I really want. It's not forever." "Got it," I said, nodding. For a moment, he just stared at me, trying to read my face, but I wasn't giving him anything. Let him stew in his own awkwardness. He stood up, smoothing his hands over his jeans. "I'll stay at my mom's for a bit," he said. "It's not forever. We'll talk once I've had some time." "All right," I said, keeping my voice neutral. He hesitated, like he wanted to say something more, but then he just grabbed his bag and headed for the door. "Thanks for understanding," he said, pausing before stepping out. I just nodded again, keeping my face blank. After he left, I stood there for a moment, wondering how I couldn't see him as a husband anymore. He was gone, figuring out his ex, and he actually thought I was sitting here, waiting for him to figure out if I was good enough to fit into his perfect little fantasy life. But he didn't get it. This wasn't his decision anymore. I walked over to the window and watched his car pull out of the driveway. He was probably feeling relieved, thinking he'd bought himself some time to figure things out with Anna. Let him think that. The truth was, I had already made my decision. I wasn't going to argue, wasn't going to fight for someone who thought it was okay to keep me on the back burner while he explored his doubts. He could have his break. He could have Anna. I was done playing along. The funny thing is, I didn't even feel angry anymore. I felt free. It was like a switch had flipped in my head. All this time, I'd been worried about what he wanted, what he needed, how I could fix things. But now it was about me. I sat down on the couch. I could already hear his voice in my head, weeks or maybe months from now, trying to spin his way back in. I made a mistake, Raina. I needed clarity. But now I see what I really want. Too late. Life doesn't work like that. I had no intention of sitting here pining for him to come back. This wasn't about playing games or getting even. It was about moving forward. He'd made his choice, and so had I. I spent the next week setting things in motion. This wasn't about revenge. It was about clearing out every trace of him and taking back control. I started with the wedding plans. I grabbed my laptop and canceled everything. The venue, the photographer, the caterer, gone. Some deposits were non-refundable, but who cares? It wasn't about the money. It was about closing this chapter for good. As I clicked through the emails, I couldn't help but smirk. He probably thought I was sitting at home, heartbroken, crying, waiting for him to realize I was better than his ex and come crawling back. He had no clue I was wiping him out of my life one email at a time. Then the house. Funny thing, David always acted like it was our home. He picked the paint colors, nagged me about throw pillows, and even insisted on those god-awful curtains in the living room. But here's what he never seemed to grasp. The house was mine. My name on the deed, my money in the mortgage. I called my buddy Noah, who hooked me up with a real estate agent. Within days, I had the paperwork ready to list it. My plan was simple: sell the house, move on, and leave David with absolutely nothing to come back to. He wanted space to figure out his life. He could do that from scratch. One part was almost too satisfying. David had left all his stuff behind when he walked out. Clothes, books, and those ridiculous man cave posters he insisted on putting everywhere. I boxed it all up and drove it to his mom's place. No heads up, no texts. I just left it on the porch with a note. Here's your stuff. Good luck with Anna. Was it petty? Maybe. Did I care? Not one bit. Then I sat there and waited. As expected, a week later, my phone buzzed. It was him. Can we talk? I think we need to clear the air. I laughed out loud. He must have realized his little fantasy with Anna wasn't all it was cracked up to be. I couldn't resist seeing how this would play out. Sure, I replied. Come by tomorrow. The next day, he showed up, and the look on his face was priceless. He stepped inside and froze, his eyes darting around the bare walls, the empty shelves, the moving boxes stacked in the corner. What's going on here? He asked, his voice trembling. I'm selling the house, I said casually, as if I were talking to a neighbor, leaning against the counter. His jaw dropped. You're what? Selling our house? It's not our house, David, I said, letting that sink in. It's mine, and I don't need this much space anymore. He stared at me like I'd slapped him. Why didn't you tell me? Why would I? You left, remember? I said, keeping my tone calm. His face went pale. Wait, so you've been planning this? You're just moving on? I shrugged. What else was I supposed to do? Sit around and wait for you to come back? He shook his head, his voice rising. Raina, no. That's not what I meant when I said I needed time. I didn't think I'd what? Take you seriously? I interrupted. You said you needed space to figure out if you wanted me or Anna, so I gave it to you. He took a step closer, his voice trembling. But I didn't mean it like this. I thought you understood. I wasn't ending things. I just needed clarity. I laughed, shaking my head. Clarity? David, you didn't want clarity. You wanted a safety net. You thought you could run off, test the waters with Anna, and then waltz back here like nothing happened. Sorry, but that's not how it works. His composure completely cracked. Raina, please, I made a mistake. Anna, she's not what I thought. She hasn't changed. I was stupid. I see that now. Please don't do this. Don't throw us away. I crossed my arms, meeting his tear-filled eyes with a steady gaze. You're right about one thing, David. You were stupid. But not just for running back to Anna. You were stupid for thinking I'd let you treat me like a backup plan. He grabbed my arm, his voice desperate. I wasn't. I swear. I panicked. I was scared. But I know now that it's you. It's always been you. Please, we can fix this. We can still get married. I yanked my arm away, shaking my head. No, we can't. You made your choice, David. You chose doubt. You chose Anna. And now I'm choosing me. His face crumpled, and he started sobbing. Raina, please, I'll do anything to fix this. It's too late, I said firmly. You broke this. You don't get to come back and pretend it never happened. He stood there shaking, tears streaming down his face. Finally, realizing there was nothing left to say, he turned and walked out the door. And with that, David was out of my life. Or so I thought. I sold the house, moved into my new apartment, and started putting everything about him behind me. I wasn't bitter. I just didn't have the energy to keep dragging his baggage along. I thought I'd handled it cleanly, that we'd moved on separately. But David, he wasn't done, and when he made his move, it wasn't head on. The first sign something was off came in a phone call from my mom. I'd barely said hello before she launched into it. Raina, why am I hearing from Aunt Sharon that the wedding is canceled? Is this true? I froze, the words catching me off guard. The only people who knew the wedding was off were me and David. I hadn't even told my family yet because, frankly, I didn't want to deal with their reaction. But now the news was out. Where did Aunt Sharon hear that? I asked cautiously, already suspecting the answer. From David's mom. She's been telling everyone that you called off the wedding. Apparently David is heartbroken and you're being unreasonable. I nearly dropped the phone. Heartbroken, unreasonable. The audacity of him spinning this like I was the bad guy was almost impressive. He had been the one to walk away, the one who wanted to figure things out with his cheating ex, and now he was painting me as the villain. Mom, that's not what happened, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. David and I aren't together anymore. He made his choice, and I moved on. Well, you need to do some damage control, she said, her tone sharp. Half the family is talking about this, and they all think you blindsided him. Damage control. That's what it came to now. Not only had David managed to worm his way into my family's conversations, but he'd turned the entire thing into a pity party for himself. I should have let it go. I should have chalked it up to him being petty and left it at that. But when I got a call later that same day from my boss, I realized this wasn't just a family issue anymore. Hey, Raina, I wanted to check in, my boss said cautiously. Is everything okay? I heard from a friend of mine. Apparently your ex is going through a tough time. And she mentioned your name. My ex mentioned my name at work. I gripped the phone tighter. He didn't give any details, but I knew how these things spread. Gossip has a way of slithering into places it doesn't belong. I thanked my boss for letting me know and hung up, but my blood was boiling. The pieces were falling into place. David hadn't just been telling his side of the story to family. He was dragging my name into his personal sob story with anyone who would listen. That was the last straw. I'd stayed quiet up until now, thinking it was the mature thing to do. But if he wanted to play games, I wasn't going to sit back and let him rewrite the narrative. The next day, I sent a group message to both of our families, keeping it short and to the point. Hi, everyone. I wanted to address something. David and I are no longer engaged, and it was a mutual decision after a lot of difficult conversation. I'd appreciate it if we could all respect each other's privacy and move forward without assigning blame. Thank you. It wasn't dramatic, but it was enough to cut off his nonsense before it spread further. Then I blocked him on everything. Phone, social media, email. He didn't deserve access to my life anymore, not after how he'd tried to twist things. The fallout wasn't easy. My mom wasn't thrilled about me handling it so bluntly, and a couple of relatives still whispered about how I could throw away such a good thing. But I knew the truth, and that was enough. All my ex-fiancé did was show me how little he respected me or the relationship we'd had. If anything, he made me even more grateful that I'd cut him out for good. So here I was, finally drawing the line. Blocking him was like flipping a switch, cutting the power to the drama machine he'd been running for weeks. It wasn't just about silencing him, it was about reclaiming my peace. The first thing I did was take control of the narrative. People love to fill in the blanks when you stay quiet, and I'd given David way too much space to craft his story. So I called up the people whose opinions mattered to me, my close friends, my siblings, and my mom. I laid it all out, no embellishments, just the facts. Look, I told my mom over coffee, I didn't throw away a good thing. He bailed on me for his ex, plain and simple. I tried to be civil, but he's out here spinning tales like he's the victim. I'm not letting him trash my name. Mom gave me her classic disapproving look. The one that could make a grown woman feel like a scolded teenager. I get it, Raina, she said slowly, but you could have been more tactful. Tactful? Mom, he's airing our dirty laundry to anyone who will listen. I'm done playing nice. That seemed to click for her. She sighed, finally conceding. I just want you to be happy. Don't let him drag you down. From there, I made it my mission to shut down the whispers wherever they popped up. If someone brought up David, I gave them the short version. It didn't work out, and he's not the person I thought he was. End of story. Most people got the hint and dropped it, but a few needed a bit more directness, like my cousin Mark, who cornered me at a family barbecue. Hey, Raina, I heard you left David high and dry. What's up with that? I stared at him, barely believing the audacity. You heard wrong, Mark. He ditched me to figure things out with his ex. If you want the full story, ask him. I'm not playing the gossip game. He backed off pretty quick after that. While I was busy cleaning up the social mess, I also had to deal with work. My boss, thankfully, was chill about the whole thing. I explained the situation in private, emphasizing that it wouldn't affect my performance. He nodded and said, I figured there was more to it. Just keep your head down and don't let it get to you. But David wasn't done trying to stir the pot. A week later, I got an email from a mutual friend of ours, Sarah. She wasn't taking sides, but she felt the need to share something. Hey, Raina, I thought you should know David's been posting stuff online. Nothing outright nasty, but it's obvious he's talking about you. Just wanted to give you a heads up. I thanked Sarah and checked it out. Sure enough, he'd been posting vague, passive-aggressive quotes about betrayal and heartbreak. Stuff like, some people will throw away diamonds to chase stones. Real subtle. At first, I was tempted to respond, to call him out for the nonsense. But then I stopped myself. Why stoop to his level? He wanted a reaction, and I wasn't giving him one. Instead, I reported his posts for harassment and moved on. That was the real turning point for me, realizing I didn't owe him or anyone an explanation anymore. My life wasn't a public forum for him to dissect and manipulate. If he wanted to live in the past, that was his problem, not mine. One night, sitting with my buddy Jake, he said something that really stuck with me. Raina, you dodged a bullet. Imagine if all this came out after you were married. You're better off. And he was right. As painful as it had been, breaking things off with David before we tied the knot was the best thing that could have happened. It wasn't just about avoiding the drama. Being with him had blinded me to what I really wanted in a partner, someone who had my back, not someone who'd turn on me the second things got tough. By the time a few months had passed, David's antics started to fade into the background. People moved on, and so did I. The family stopped bringing him up. The whispers at work died down, and his online posts eventually dried up. It was like he finally realized he couldn't keep milking the situation for sympathy. I'd like to say I forgave him, but honestly I didn't, and that's okay. Not every wrong has to be forgiven to be left behind. I don't hate him, I just don't care anymore. The real closure came when I realized I wasn't waiting for him to apologize or for people to see my side. I was living my life for me, not for anyone else's validation. So I guess all I want to say is that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that save you. Cutting ties with David wasn't easy, but it was necessary. It taught me to trust my gut, to stand up for myself, and to never settle for less than I deserve. Looking back now, I don't regret a thing. I'm in a better place mentally, emotionally, and even physically. Life's too short to waste on people who don't value you. And if I've learned anything, it's this. The best revenge isn't getting even, it's living well. And with that, this chapter of my life is officially closed. Thanks for sticking until the end.